Okay, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. This is not going to be a very long stream. I got a friend coming into town for 4th of July. Jeremy, many of you have probably heard of him, and he was on a episode of Caniac Sessions with myself, Griffin, AB one time when I drove back to Raleigh right before. I want to say it was before Game 4. I went up there, and we all went somewhere to watch it against the Devils. Um, so I just want to give my quick thoughts and elaborate on everything that's gone on the last few days. So I'm going to talk about three things in order, and then I'll take a few comments. I may not be able to get to all of them, and then I got to get going. So first things first, when it comes to the Keandre Miller trade, when I'm done with it, I'm going to introduce to you what I believe is the flow chart that hockey media goes by every time the Hurricanes make a transaction, whether that's signing somebody, extending somebody, trades, whatever. It does not matter what the Carolina Hurricanes do. The national media will always find a way to spin it how it was a bad idea. It was an overpay. They didn't swing for the fences, whatever. That's getting annoying. So they clearly learned from the lessons with Rantanen because there was an extension in place for Keandre Miller. But people are saying that there was an overpay. I understand why people have that concern. But to pull an in-division trade-off like that, you got to give up a little bit more typically. Now, if Keandre Miller, let's say he plays in any other division, or especially if he's in the Western Conference, maybe you don't give up so much to make that trade happen. I know some people are pissed off about Scott Morrow being traded. That is going to turn out to be one of the best decisions the Carolina Hurricanes organization has made. So during the regular season, I know that I said Morrow did pretty well, but the Canes are in a position where they don't need to build on players that are strictly good during the regular season. Now, let me get to Ehlers in a second after this. And there's concerns about how good Ehlers would be in the postseason for the Canes if he were to sign with the Canes. Morrow, I saw some things in his game that reminded me a lot of Jake Bean in particular, but a lot of you may remember Ryan Murphy. Now, granted, Ryan Murphy was on a very, very bad team. The Canes were awful back then. We all know that. But the organization as a whole tends to not hold on to players like this. For example, if you think about it, all the really offensively minded defensemen that the Canes have had in the last few years, they don't keep them for longer than 3 seasons at a time. Dougie Hamilton, 3 seasons. Brent Burns, 3 seasons, even though there was a very strong possibility of him coming back and he had transformed his game into more of a shutdown type of game and the offense had kind of went away. But still, he falls into that category, not as much as someone like them. Tony DeAngelo, 1 year and then another year of being kind of getting roped into being the 7th defenseman when the Pesci trade fell through. I mean, you can maybe even put Brady Shea into that category, even though he stayed for, I believe, 4. Let's see. They got him in 2020, 21, 22. I know I'm counting on my fingers. Forgive me. 23, 24. So he didn't stay that long, and he leaned more towards the offensive side of things. The Canes tend to not keep players like that. Now, that might concern some people regarding Nikishin. Nikishin's not going anywhere. Nikishin has that physical element. He's going to be on a pretty solid contract when this is over, and he's not a typical RFA. Walt Ruff tweeted something one time about how he's a exclusive rights free agent or something like that. It's something different because of the situation he was in the KHL before the Canes were able to bring him over. So the organization has a history of not holding on to players like Morrow. And then when I saw his playoff performance, I knew that he was going to be the rule, not the exception. It does not surprise me at all that the Hurricanes traded him. Now, what you're getting with Keandre Miller, you're getting someone who can throw hits. He's big, he's rangy, he skates really well. He can protect the puck with his body. He's got a pretty hard shot. He does not have an enamoring amount of playmaking ability, but it's still pretty good. But there's enough playmakers on this team. We need guys who will throw hits. We need guys who will shoot the puck. Keandre Miller does both those things. More than anything, I'm excited the fact that we got a big guy who will throw his weight around. Now, gap control is a bit of an issue with Keandre Miller. It's not as bad as some people are making it out to be. And between Slavin, Gleason, and Rod and Chatfield, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think that they're going to teach him what he needs to know. And he's going to improve in that regard. He's going to get a full training camp. And on day 1, he will be pretty well ready. Now, I'm not sure that they're done making moves with the defense because 4 left and 2 right. It's kind of an industry standard now to have 3 left-handed defensemen and 3 right-handed defensemen. And the Hurricanes really exemplify that, especially with the way Rod likes to have the pairs balanced. And they pull pretty similar minutes 5-on-5. The TOI between one pair or the second or the third, whatever order you want to put them in, doesn't vary very much. 5-on-5, it only varies about roughly 90 seconds to 2 minutes a game, how much Slavin's pair will get, how much Chatfield's pair will get, so on and so forth. So he's going to pull some heavy minutes with the Canes. He could be paired with Slavin. He could be paired with Chatfield. I have no idea what that's going to look like just yet. Additionally, we have no idea if the front office is done making moves just yet. So in the event that he does play with Slavin, he'll probably play his offside and keep Slavin on the left because Keandre can bring the offense. Maybe Walker bumps up and maybe they bring in a third pair right-handed shutdown guy. And then you got Mike Riley for a seventh defenseman, and that shows how deep the Canes are because Mike Riley is still a pretty serviceable sixth defenseman. So we'll see how that plays out. He would be a sixth defenseman on a team that wasn't very deep at defense, but Mike Riley is really, really solid for that role. So they might not be done making moves just yet. And maybe they are going to go with two left-handed defensemen on the top pair and have some combination of Slavin and Nikishin or Slavin and Miller. It might be signaling a little bit of a change in direction of how they're going to manage the roster, which I think it's long overdue that they do something like that. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet, and those eggs have not been broken in a long time. So, in regards to Ehlers, Crispy Crawfish made a really good statement here, and I'm going to read this to go into my next point. I understand the impatience from the fan base, but if Ehlers is getting similar offers from all the teams, I understand him reviewing his options instead of just running to one team. Also, nice Carolina is at least in consideration still. Right now, Ehlers is holding up the market. Chris Johnson said something about this earlier. It's kind of a water is wet statement, but it still applies. Once Ehlers is signed, all the other dominoes are going to fall, wherever he signs at. Now, the three teams I've seen the most, Carolina, Washington, and Tampa. Money is not going to be an issue. Carolina has the cap space to pay Ehlers more than either of those guys. The Caps would have to move somebody else to create cap space, and so would Tampa. If Ehlers goes to Tampa, I know that this would never happen, but my dream target of somebody in Tampa that maybe is realistic to get, maybe an outside chance, a very outside chance, would be Anthony Cirelli. He's an excellent 200-foot player. He hit a career high in points last season, and he would probably be a habitual 60-point second-line center in the Hurricane system. He's very fast. He forechecks hard. He's got a really good defensive side of his game, and he'll be an all-situations player. And if you bring Anthony Cirelli in, you're one step closer to having a team that can put together two lethal power play units and finally having a legitimate second-line center to go in that spot that has been hurting ever since Trocheck left, with the exception of the times that KK has shown 2C potential, but I don't think it's there long-term. And everyone knows I love KK, but the kid's he's a middle six center with an offensive upside when he plays well. He's just not a definitive 2C. Now, how that is all going to shake out, I don't know. But once Ehlers signs, that's when you start looking at the rest of the dominoes falling, and maybe the Canes make a push to get Mason McTavish out of Anaheim because they're chock full of centers there. So maybe you can get him. Because right now, Mason McTavish is looking at having a diminished role compared to what he had before with Anaheim. So that's a possibility as well. Let's get to some more of the comments here. Scott Thomas says, Hezbollah Canes says contract talks with Ehlers stalled due to him being unsure Carolina is the best fit for him. I hope he's wrong. Yeah, I'm not sure what the holdup is with Ehlers, but I do understand he is, not only is Ehlers the top free agent, there's nobody really close to him. It's Ehlers, 40 feet of air, and then everybody else that's still available. So there's that to consider. The reason why the Canes haven't signed someone like, say, Pew Suter, I'm not saying that they would sign him in particular, but he's kind of the next guy on the board now, is because, you know, everyone's waiting to see what happens with Ehlers. He's going to dictate what the rest of the market does. I know that he would be a good fit, but at the same time, if the Canes didn't sign Ehlers and went out and got someone like Mason McTavish, I'd be totally fine with that. That's right, Jay, you're right. Pew Suter did sign. I forgot about that. He went to St. Louis. Sorry about that. It's been a lot to keep up with, even with nothing happening. Thayer Kreft says, what's up? Todd Davis burns 1 year to Colorado. I wish him all the best. I know that there were times I criticized him during the season, but he played really well in the playoffs. If Burnsy hadn't lost a step, I would be totally okay with bringing him back. Or if there was a left-handed shutdown defenseman that he could play with, then I would also be okay with bringing him back. But unfortunately, he just doesn't fit in the roster. If he ever came back to, say, work in the front office with the Canes, like if he did something in player development, he would be excellent at that. He's really good with the young kids. He's easy, he looks like he's a really good communicator. He's a good leader, and he has an immense amount of playing experience. Like the fact that he's still an effective NHL player at his age, albeit not as effective as he once was, the fact he's still an effective NHL player at his age is remarkable, to say the least. Baker says Tulsky will get Robertson and McTavish and other 2C Hopium. Yeah, I would love to have Mason McTavish here. I think he would be an excellent fit. I really do. Like, that's another guy I think could be a habitual 60-point player potentially with the Canes. Chance says, I'd like Slavin Miller. Miller said he's comfortable playing RD. Anything but Sean Walker. Yeah, Suter signed already. Thank you for correcting me on that. I forgot that he signed with St. Louis. It's been a lot to keep up with and everything like that. Baker says Ehlers is not going to make a huge difference in winning a cup. I kind of hope he passes on Carolina and Carolina finds better pieces. Yeah, and, in a lot of other seasons, I wouldn't be advocating for signing someone like Nikolai Ehlers. The fact of the matter is, though, the Canes only have 3 legitimate top 6 forwards, and that's Aho, Svechnikov, and Jarvis. And then, it's like any top 6 forward you could add would improve the team. And Ehlers would be a good fit with Aho. He wouldn't be as good as Gensel, but Gensel's not here. So, like, you kind of got to take what you can get. So, and my other reason for advocating for Ehlers is the way that he plays later in his career, he could be an effective bottom 6 forward, and he would be pennies against the cap by then. Yep, Suter signed. Suter on Blues. Yeah. Sorry about that misstep there. Samuel Wallace says, I love Sean Walker. I do too. Chance is like the world's #1 Sean Walker hater, but I think it's like his version of the Brady Shea thing. So that's really all I have to say about a lot of this stuff. Just to recap, Miller's biggest issue is gap control. I think that's going to get taken care of because he's got 2 things working in his favor to improve that. He skates really well, and he's got a lot of size and a lot of reach. And between Gleason, Slavin, Chatfield, and Rod, he'll fix that deficiency in his game, and that'll be a lot less of a problem. Then as far as Ehlers goes, there's bigger needs. There really are. Hold on 1 second, guys. Hey, I'll give you a treat in a minute. Lay down. Good boy. Man, I got a good dog over there, man. I told him to lay down, and that's exactly what he did. Now, as far as I think in due time, whatever the holdup is with Ehlers will be revealed. But Ehlers is one of those guys that has an all situations type of skill set that would practically improve any team. He's not pure offense. He's not pure defense. He's better on the defensive side of things, if you ask me. But he also produces a decent amount, and that would help any team, not just the Canes. It's just the Canes happen to be the front runner as far as can be competitive, fits the whole idea of him wanting to have warmer weather and, having the money to sign him and having the cap space to sign him. Let's see what else we got here. Baker says, I doubt it's going to happen. My dream would be see Robertson with Aho. Jason Robertson's on my dream team, like dead serious. Like if I did one of those NHL 25 fantasy expansion draft things, he would be probably one of the first guys I would get. He really would. BG, what's up, dude? Taking a break to hop on. Done with the drama. You either want to be a Cane or not. Time to pivot and go acquire help elsewhere via trade. I agree. Levy Lateau, what's up, dude? I think Stanky could be counted as the top 6 guy as well. If not last season, then almost certainly next one or the one after. He's trending in that direction, yeah. The only thing is with Stankoven, I definitely think that there's a really, really high top 6 potential there. I just want to get some size in the top 6 personally. But even then, he's one of those guys that actually uses his size, his smaller size, to play the way he does. And Jarvis does the same thing where, he makes body contact with a low center of gravity, and that helped him get the puck away from people. For example, Seth Jarvis laid that huge hit on Brett Pesce, and that, is really well known now. And part of the reason he was able to do that is because he gets really low in those hits. He gets that low center of gravity. He hits somebody in the torso and, can take them off their feet because he's strong, but he's not that big. So those short, kind of stocky dudes like that who skate really well and have a lot of stability on their feet tend to play that way. And Stankoven is also one of those guys. So I definitely think he could do it. Now, that's another thing working against the Canes as far as the necessity seen around signing Ehlers is, one, you have Stankoven, who has a great 200-foot game, really good on the defensive side of the game, and brings some offense. He has a hell of a shot. So there's that. As far as organizational in ways in-house to maybe rectify the wing situation, Nadeau could practically take the jump this season coming out of training camp. That's a distinct possibility. Now, he looks like he's getting close to being ready. Training camp, I think, will be a huge determining factor for him as opposed to any other player. He's going to be the one that's going to have the most eyes on him to potentially make the jump right now. In addition to that, it's like the Canes have a much bigger need to fill at center. So I wouldn't be surprised if they end up with another center by the time the day is over if Nikolai Ehlers were to choose to sign somewhere today, regardless of whether that's Carolina or elsewhere. Baker asked, by the way, why isn't Ehlers signing Winnipeg? Wants to stay away from the spotlight. That's part of it. And he wants a bigger role, which in Carolina, he would get that. He would probably be on the top power play unit, and he would probably be playing on the top line with any combination of Aho, Jarvis, and Svechnikov. So he would definitely get that bigger role. Yeah. So it's bigger role. It would be a little bit of both from everything that I have seen regarding that. Samuel Wallace says, you think Nadeau could make the roster next year? It's a possibility. I think that training camp is going to be like, there's not a whole lot of room on the team right now for anybody else to surprise in training camp and make it right now, especially not for the defense. But for the forwards, there's the possibility that Nadeau could make the jump. Now, if Nadeau does make the jump, you've already got Stankoven, so you've got some smaller yet effective players. That's where you really got to start thinking about potentially trading Jackson Blake, even though he's been a really good fit and he showed a lot of progress over the course of the season. That's something to think about. Cabry, what's up, buddy? Nadeau and McTavish would be my move. Yeah. The Mason McTavish sweepstakes is actually looking like something we could get in. Scott Thomas says, Brandon, did you see the preliminary roster for the Canadian team? Seth Jarvis was left off. Maybe he will have that surgery now instead of delaying it. See, I think that that's going to change a whole lot because over the course of the season, a lot of stuff can change. Like, for example, Jason Robertson and Tage Thompson getting left off of Team USA was a huge surprise to me. I know Robo was having kind of a down year, and Tage Thompson is playing for a dumpster fire of a team, and I think that that's deflating his numbers and how good of a player he actually is. Tage Thompson was way too good of a player to be left off that roster. Meanwhile, Jack Hughes is out there getting knocked over by gusts of wind. Like every time somebody adjusted the AC in the building, he fucking fell over, and he was on that team and he shouldn't have been there. He's not nearly, he's not even the best player on the Devils. He's definitely not one of the best ones on Team USA. Like, I mean, I catch heat for this all the time, and I'm sticking with it. On the New Jersey Devils, Jack Hughes is the third best forward on that team. Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt are significantly better than him. Like, I don't, it's like, yeah, I understand he does all this flashy shit in the offensive zone. And, that's all that makes the highlight reels. And people think that he's a much better player than he actually is. But even with how much he improved defensively this year, he's still a train wreck defensively. He really is. Levy Leto says, I think it's a really smart move to keep a good amount of cap space for the start of the season. The money goes further if we trade for one or two top rental forwards at the deadline. Yes, I could absolutely see that. Because you let that cap space accrue, and the next thing you know, you can go out and make a trade and get someone like when the Gensel trade happened, that was from accruing cap space over the course of the season, even though they were close to the cap ceiling when they made that move. Baker says Brad is underrated. I agree. Jesper Bratt is one of the best 200-foot wingers in the game. And, I hate the Devils. But anybody who thinks that Jesper Bratt isn't a good player, he's an amazing player. I could see him being someone who gets a Selke in the future. And wingers don't typically win that award. But he could do it. Lax99, what's up, buddy? What do you think about Dmitry Voronkov, free agent, 24 years old, 6'4", 220 solid forward who scored 20 goals last season? I don't know a ton about Voronkov. I think maybe he could be a good pickup, but I wouldn't put him near the top of the list just yet. Let me do some research on him. I need a little bit more knowledge of him before I can definitively comment on that. Dylan Bollinger, who is more likely for us to trade for when it comes to a 2C? Right now, I would say McTavish. I mean, he's not my dream target, but as far as like players who could potentially be available, I would say he's number one right now. PG says Keller being left off the USA roster was laughable too. Yeah, that one didn't make sense to me either. And then, there was a case for Caulfield too. So Hughes is a better Zegras, but basically still ass. Yeah, that's the thing that I was like I've always called him East Coast Zegras, and people get pissed off about that, but the dude's just not that good. Like, I mean, he's an incredibly skilled player, but he gets lost defensively all the time. He's horrible on the back check. And then we saw, especially in Four Nations, when the physicality ramped up, and he couldn't handle it. Like, Jack Hughes just ain't that good. Fly and reply. What do you think we could do to try and make a move for a guy like Tage Thompson? Give up half the farm, basically. But I think the bigger factor there would be waiting to see if Buffalo has another bad start, and then he would probably have to want out for that to happen. I would love for that to happen. I really would, because one, that means the Sabres are having another bad season. Who doesn't want that? But it also, like, I don't see them giving him up yet. I think that it's going to take some more dire circumstances to occur before he would be available. And as much as I would like to have Larkin too, he's from Michigan. He doesn't want to leave the Red Wings, I don't think. He played college hockey there and everything. So Samuel Wallace says, what do you think of Ryan O'Reilly as 2C? If Nashville would give him up, I would do that in a heartbeat. He's one of those guys that wouldn't have to be taught much on the way in. Rod would just absolutely love him. He's got the defensive side of the game down and everything, and I'm pretty sure he's won Selkes too. I'll tell you in a second. Yeah, he won the Selke in 2019. I remembered him having one. But yeah, that's one that I would definitely like. I'd rather get McTavish than him, though, just from the age standpoint. Ryan O'Reilly is a very defensively competent player because he reads the play really well and he knows where to go. It's not really so much the speed with him. And he's a big dude. He's not physical, but he uses his body to protect the puck really well, and he's really good in front of the net. And that could be particularly helpful on the power play. Cavery says for McTavish, for me, would be Blake, KK, and maybe a first or second, whatever gets the deal done. Yeah, Blake and KK are the top trade pieces right now, if you ask me. Nick Zoo 01, welcome to the show. Florida over the cap. What do you think the chances are they would trade Anton Lundell? Considering the cap gymnastics that Florida has managed to pull off, I don't know if they would move him out. I'd have to look at the roster and tell you know what. I'll look at it right now. Let me see what time it is. Okay, I still got a few more minutes before I got to get going. Okay, so the Panthers are 2,950,000 over, and Lundell's cap hit is, let me find it here, because I'd take Anton Lundell's cap hit is $5 million. I don't know if they'd give him up though, man. It's like that third line, they absolutely like that line cooked really, really heavily in the playoffs. See, I look at this and I think that like they would try to move on from, let's see, they signed Nosek this offseason. They're not going to give Lustarin, they're not going to give him up. He's good, but he wouldn't help the Hurricanes a whole lot with what they need. They're definitely not giving up Tkachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Verhaeghe, Marchand. Maybe you could pry Lundell out of there, and you would be able to do it for strictly future since they don't have cap. Because they are 2.95 over, so maybe you can make that happen. It's a possibility. He has more Eric Robinson style of play in regards to Voronkov, but definitely good with creative space for plays. He has a wicked shot too. Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly got the Conn Smythe too when the Blues won the Stanley Cup. Good point. Fly Henry Fly says, I love Thompson. Hot take here, but if Buffalo start goes like you said, I would give up Svech and some more pieces for him. 6'6" guy who has scored 47 goals, but maybe I'm delusional. No, you're not delusional. The Hurricanes have a bigger need at center than they do at wing. So if Svechnikov were to get traded, and I'm totally against trading Svechnikov, but the only way that I would condone trading Svechnikov personally is if you're bringing us like a definitive upgrade from KK at center back. That's the only way that I'm okay with trading Svechnikov. Maybe if you have like a 1-for-1 trade for someone like Alex Tuch with an extension in place for him, because I believe he's on the last year of his deal. I'll tell you in a second about that too, just to verify that I am talking about the right thing there. Well, yeah, Alex Tuch is going into the last year of his deal at a $4.75 million cap hit. So maybe, just maybe, for something like that, because, Tuch would more than likely be a better fit. So we'll see. But, it's like, I don't know. I just don't see Buffalo, out of all the players Buffalo would give up, Tuch would be, or excuse me, Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch both actually would be some of the last ones they'd give up. BG says Larkin was pretty pissed about the team doing nothing to help with the deadline and have been silent this offseason. Larkin would move at this point, I think. If he would, that's one Carolina would have to jump on. Samuel Wallace says Florida would rather move a guy like Rodriguez than Lundell, in my opinion. Yeah, I think that too. And, Rodriguez's cap hit is $3 million, so that would get them back under the ceiling if they were to find a way to move Rodriguez. I like Evan Rodriguez, but I just don't think the Hurricanes need him when they've already got a lot of the depth wingers and depth scoring that they have. Baker says only if Lundell doesn't want to play 3C anymore, could be 3 years from now. Yeah, that's another thing to consider with that. Like Lundell coming to Carolina, he would at least have a increased role. What are your thoughts on Philip Deneau as a potential 2C? Philip Deneau is incredibly defensively responsible. We saw that a long time ago, like when he was playing in Montreal in the bubble against Winnipeg. The defensive side of his game really, really stood out. Let me see what his numbers are point wise. Because the Hurricanes, like they need offense more than they need defense. $5.5 million cap hit, UFA 2027, so all that's doable. 8 goals, 35 assists for 43 points in 80 games played. That's not a terrible idea. That wouldn't be my top choice, but up there. Leva Leto says this is a complete pipe dream, but I'll remind everyone that Kakko is still an RFA, and we've heard nothing about him if Seattle can't convince him to sign in that city. That might not be bad either. Chance says Svech is too good in the playoffs to be traded. Yeah, I like how well he played in the playoffs. So it's like, unless there's a definitive second line center coming back the other way, Svechnikov, I don't think should be moved. No. His price is probably through the roof. Yeah. Capo Kakko is in my opinion. Yeah, the only thing about, I'm kind of 50-50 on the idea of bringing in someone like Capo Kakko. Because, like I said, I'd rather the Canes get Ehlers in free agency than Capo Kakko. Maybe you could do that if you needed to round out the top 6. But if you already had 5 definitive top 6 forwards and you needed a 6th one, maybe Kakko could be that guy. But right now, no, I wouldn't make that move. Lex99 says Kakko would be a great sign. He's familiar with Keandre Miller, too. That is true. Leva Leto says 10 plus 20 and 39 games in Seattle after getting out of the NYR organization. Yeah, and I said that he was going to be a probably an 80-point player in Seattle with an increased role, so we'll see. Fly Henry Fly says, yeah, I doubt Buffalo would ever give them up, but Tage is one of my favorite players, and I would love for them to try and jump on him. I would, too. So now with Morrow gone, Badinka is our number 1 defensive prospect, but I see Legault coming up before him. Badinka has a higher ceiling, but Legault is closer to being NHL ready. If the Canes choose not to bring Chatfield back in 2 seasons because he's got 2 years left on his deal, I could see Legault coming up and staying. And like I said, a pair with him and Nikishin is like a dream pair for me. They would just vaporize motherfuckers every time that they tried to enter the zone. Fly Henry Fly says, Ehlers think he is like LeBron for leaving Miami with this. Good Lord. That's a good way to put it. Kakko is not top 6 in a cup contender and top 6 players. What Carolina needs to see and prefer a goal scorer. Yeah, Capo Kakko is not near the top of the list. I would maybe do that to round out the top 6, but that's if you already have 5 top 6 players. So there's 2 more spots to fill before you even have that discussion. Lax 90 says, what do you think happens with Roslovic? I don't think he's coming back to Carolina. I'm not ruling it out, but I would rather, if they brought Roslovic back and used him as a bottom six winger, I'd be okay with that, but only if there's no other options, which I see a lot of other options before that, like the potential for Nadeau to make it out of camp. Roslovic, for all of his defensive faults, he definitely has speed, and you need that to play for the Canes. Samuel Wallace says scouts like Badinka a lot more than Legault. I've been doing a lot of research on our prospects today. Yeah, so when it comes to that, what I, to expand on what Dylan Bollinger was saying, if I think Legault will see NHL action sooner because he's been developing longer. And then Badinka, I could see him eventually replacing Ghost. I'm still on Jarvis or Stank as 2C. If they can't bring a 2C in, those are not bad options. Jarvis, I think that he'll have to get his shoulder fixed first because if it's his right rotator cuff that's messed up, if I remember correctly, he's not going to be able to torque his hand like he needs to for faceoffs, even though he was taking a lot of them on the power play last year. But that's one of the times where you need to be best on faceoffs because other teams, like really good penalty killers, i.e. Jordan Stahl, are really good at faceoffs. And he's like the top penalty killing forward the Hurricanes have still while he's still here despite his age, and he's slowed down a little bit too. But he is excellent at faceoffs, and that lends really well to the defensive side of the game. And a lot of teams do that for their penalty killers where they have really good faceoff guys out there. Also, Dmitry Orlov's agent needs a raise. Yeah, absolutely. Matthew Brown says apparently Utah is in on the Ehlers sweepstakes. So, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Leaving Leto says, aren't our bottom six forwards a lock already? We just need a 2C and a scoring winger. One of those can wait until the deadline. Yeah, I would prefer the second line center issue get addressed now because that's been a problem for way too long, and it's a little bit harder of a problem to address. As far as picking up a scoring winger, you could maybe get someone like Ricard Raquel, for example, at the deadline next year. Now, are they going to pay for him what Pittsburgh allegedly wanted last year? Because the reports were that Dubas wanted 2 first-round picks for Raquel. He ain't worth that. Samuel Wallace says, how happy are you now that we drafted Ryabkin? I like Ryabkin a lot. I'm going to do a lot more in regards to I'm going to be doing a lot more in regards to Ryabkin as far as content goes. Dylan Bollinger says Burns will be wearing 84 in Colorado. All right, that makes sense. Gross. All right, boys. I got to get ready to go to the airport and pick my buddy up. But yeah, I just wanted to give my thoughts on where I think a lot of the stuff is going to happen. So we'll wait and see what happens with Ehlers because before that, the rest of the dominoes are going to fall after that happens. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. But I got to get out of here. This will probably be my last stream until after the 6th. And then I'll start picking it up again where I left off. But enjoy 4th of July. Have fun. Barbecue. Be thankful for everything you have in this country because we live pretty well in America. Also, to the United Kingdom, I would like to say enjoy going to work tomorrow, you sorry redcoat motherfuckers. Jeff Skinner, 7x14. No, don't talk about that. Safe travels and holiday, bro. Same to you, buddy. But yeah, I'm going to get out of here, guys. I'll see y'all later.